This video is about the 5 lure types I use to catch mulloway. And before we get any further, let's get one thing clear. This is not a sponsored video. This video will teach you something that I believe is critical. Understanding the why we use a certain lure in a specific situation. If you learn how to match your lure style to the depth, the current, the fish behavior, you'll stop wasting casts and start catching more fish. And that's what this is for. Not brands, not trends, just practical thinking you can apply to your fishing. To be honest, it doesn't matter what fish you target, this video will help. Today I'll cover my top 5 lures for mulloway, which will be Jerkshad soft plastics, soft fibes, prawn soft plastics, micro jigs, and octo jigs. I mostly fish in Moreton Bay, which is an open bay. I fish in rivers, sometimes offshore, and mostly in the day, and mostly from a boat. But these ideas can translate across to all different conditions. Let's get into the first one. If you only take one thing away from this video, make it this. Jerkshad soft plastics catch more mulloway than any other lure I use. These are my workhorse soft plastic. I fish these mostly around 5-inch side, and I'll rig these on a jig head ranging from about 3/8 ounce up to 5/8 ounce, depending on the depth and current that I'm fishing in. The profile matches a lot of bait fish that mulloway eat, and the way you work them makes them extremely versatile. I use these in water about 20 meters deep. Beyond that, there are more efficient tools, but inside that range, they are deadly. So the way I fish these is I use a double hop retrieve. So what that means is I'm hopping my lure twice. So my rod goes 1, 2. The reason I do this is the first hop often just picks up a lot of the slack that's in the line. It doesn't actually move the lure a lot. The second hop, as I lift that rod tip, that lure will dart up and then sink back down. And what I want to do here is I want that lure to go up just past the fish and then sink back down just past their face. Now what that's going to do is give the fish an opportunity to eat, because mulloway, they love to hit a lure as it's sinking back down past their face. So what I'm doing is I'm lifting the rod tip up twice, 1, 2, the lure goes up, and as it's sinking, what I'm doing with my rod is I'm actually following the lure down and just keeping that line not tight, but just a little bit of slack, so that lure is still sinking naturally, but I'm still keeping in touch with that lure. So if that fish eats it, I have every opportunity to get that hook into that Jew's mouth. Because what happens is with Jew is when they eat, they're not just biting down on a lure, they're inhaling it down. And when they inhale it, they can also quickly spit it out. So we want to make sure that as soon as we feel that bite, we feel the tick in the line, that lure's got it down. You set the hook and it stays in, otherwise it'll just come straight out. So very important there that when you are fishing these lures, you stay in contact with them and keep it in front of the fish's face as long as possible. When it comes to picking the color for the lure, I tend to go with natural colors. As a general rule, you can match the color of the water. So in cleaner waters, I'll go more transparent, clearer colors, kind of something like that. And in dirty waters, you can go darker tops or darker bodied lures. I don't normally fish black. I don't normally fish in really dirty water either. But if it was dirty water, I'd go for a more solid color, not a transparent color, something that's going to give a good silhouette in the water. So my biggest ever mulloway, my personal best, is 121 centimeters. And that fish came on a 5-inch baby bass colored Jerkshad. It was just like this profile, but different color. And it's funny because I was fishing in an area where I have caught lots of Jew before, but it was a different time of year. It was August, and normally I like fishing in around springtime. That's when it picks up. But I was fishing around this wreck, and I saw some fish sitting mid-water in the water column, which is unusual for the area that I fish. But I thought, why not? I'll try and get my lure into that zone, which is a bit tricky to do when you're fishing in current and you got fish mid-water. So I tried to keep my lure up a bit into that zone where they were sitting, and sure enough, I managed to get that lure in front of the fish's face, and I hooked up. And initially, it was heavy, really big, it was lots of runs, and I didn't actually think it was a Jew. I actually thought it was an eagle ray, because I do catch them in that area, and they are known, unfortunately, for eating lures, and they can run pretty hard. So the whole fight, I'm on with this really good fish, but I wasn't really confident that it was a Jew. And lo and behold, I saw it next to the boat, and it was this absolute monster of a Jew, and I freaked out, obviously, got the net, managed to land it, and got my personal best in. But that was on a 5-inch Jerkshad. And it's just really important that you understand, if you put this lure in front of a fish, there's not many Jew that will say no to that when it's right in front of them. So if I can get this lure in front of a mulloway, I am very confident that he's going to eat that lure. 5-inch Jerkshads, very versatile, very good lure to keep in your tackle box for mulloway. And last thing to note with picking a Jerkshad lure, now I've got a few different types here. I have my preferences in which ones I like to use, but I also have quite a variety of different brands as well. The important thing is that you pick one that is the right size. The profile looks like a Jerkshad. It's not too stiff, it's soft, so it's got a bit of movement when you hop the lure. It looks good, it presents well, it's going to catch fish. You don't need to worry too much about the brand. Most brands have a Jerkshad. This is a very, very common profile lure, so you can go to tackle shop and you will easily find one. It's not a tricky thing to do. And no brand is going to be much better than the other. They all serve the same purpose. So what you want is a 5-inch Jerkshad, looks like a bait fish, has some good colors, you can rig it on a jig head, and it's going to work, it's going to catch fish. Next up, let's look at some soft vibes. So I use these when I need a subtle but fast sinking option. Think of deeper water or stronger current. These work particularly well for fussy fish that are after a more subtle presentation. My typical weight for these is around 20 grams. They do vary, and depending on the brand, it will be up or down slightly from that. But around 20 grams is good. This will mean it will sink fast enough to get down, but still offer a very subtle presentation. These are especially useful in current or when fish are hugging the bottom. Vibes let you keep the lure in the strike zone without too much of an aggressive action. They vibrate on the lift, and the Mulloway will take it as it falls down. You can fish them by casting and retrieving it, or you can stay vertical on top of the lure and lift it up and down if you're on a boat. So how I work them is by using small controlled lifts, not big rod hops, just a short lift, just enough to feel the vibration, and then I let the lure sink back on a semi-tight line as I explained before. Not too tight, not too loose. Most bites will come as that lure is sinking down in front of the fish, so don't lose contact. Treat the retrieve like a sequence. Lift, feel the vibration, pause, and let it drop down. And just keep repeating that. You can kind of get into a bit of a rhythm, and that's a good thing. If you work your lure too aggressive, I've found that if you hop this lure too fast, the line will tangle around the hooks. It's going to foul up, which is super annoying. If you've got that lure down in front of fish and it's not working the way it's supposed to, it's not going to catch you any fish. I like using these vibes when I've sounded a good school of fish in the deep water. There's lots of current and soft plastics aren't either getting to the bottom, or I feel like I need something that's going to stay a lot closer and have more time in front of the fish's face. The vibe will be one that I go to. It's probably my second favorite of the lot. Use vibes when the sounder is showing fish sitting deep, it's quite deep water, there's lots of current, and you need a presentation that's not too bulky, but heavy enough to get down to the fish and still present quite subtly. So number 3, prawn soft plastics. I fish these mostly in rivers and shallower areas where prawns are a real food source. The size I use will range from about 3-inch up to 5-inch, and jig heads will be from about 1/4 of the ounce up to 5/8 of an ounce. So generally a bit lighter. So because I'm fishing in rivers and shallow water, smaller soft plastic can work with a lighter jig head, but you can also use these in deeper water. The 5-inch size plastics work well with the 5/8 ounce jig head. Just keep note that prawns are generally quite a bulky profile, so when you're sinking these down, you need a bit more weight because this will slow the sink and the fall will be a bit slower than, say, compared to a Jerkshad that we looked at before. The way I fish these, very similar to the Jerkshad, but probably a bit more subtle, not as aggressive with the hops, more slow lifts, but again, when it's sinking down, that's the key. You want that lure to have enough hang time in front of the fish. Getting it to the fish, that's the most critical part. And by mimicking a popular bait source of the area, so if that's prawns, then a prawn soft plastic is going to be really good. I have a number of different types that I use, different brands, they all work. I guess what you're looking for is one that actually looks like a prawn and has some sort of inbuilt action to it. There are a lot of prawns on the market that do nothing. So I like to use ones that actually have some action. So whether it's these little legs that swim, or the little feelers and bits and pieces on them that jiggle around when you move the lure. As long as there's something there that can spark the fish's interest, then it's definitely worth looking at. There are so many different types on the market. It is almost one of the most overdone lures in my opinion, but just keep that in mind when you're picking one. Look for one that actually looks like a prawn, but still swims and has a bit of action to it as well. Make sure you also have a different range of sizes in the prawn. So if you are fishing in shallow water, then you can go to a 3 or 4-inch, or if you're in deeper water, then 5-inch. I've found that any bigger than that can start to make it tricky to get bites. Prawn lures in particular are quite bulky, so when you go to a 6 or 7-inch, for whatever reason, Mulloway are less interested in eating them. Definitely, if you were just targeting big fish, like meter plus fish, then you could go to a 6 or 7-inch prawn and probably have no issue. But for those school size fish, anything over 5 inch I find makes it a bit trickier to get the bite. I think it's just too much of a profile in their face that they're not really interested in eating. Maybe they've got to use too much energy to actually eat that size of a bait and they're not interested. So 3 to 5 inch, that's the range you want to be looking at. Number 4 on the list is micro jigs. Now these are a very compact but heavy lure designed to get down quickly. So I use these specifically in two main situations: when there's heaps of current and I need to get to the bottom, and when the fish are moving fast and I want to intercept them before they're gone. So those days when the current is running, so around the full moon, new moon, you got big tides, it's very hard to actually get your lure down to the bottom and still keep contact with a soft plastic or a vibe. So I like to use a micro jig. Now the reason I like to use these, again, they sink very fast, but they're still very small. This is a 40-gram lure. It's actually smaller than any of the other lures we looked at so far. So by having a small profile and it's heavy, you can get it down to the fish, but also not be worried about putting them off by having too big of a lure in front of their face. You get that win from the sink rate, but also still being a small profile. And like I said, the other cool thing is if the fish are moving fast, often you'll find schools of fish and they're moving through quite quickly through an area, you can actually get this lure out in front of them very quickly, get it down to the bottom before they've actually moved on. So I like using jigs when I know that fish are moving around. If I can't get my soft plastic to them, I often find that I'm casting at fish, or I think I'm casting at fish, but they're gone. Then I'll go to a heavier lure like a micro jig. Now I'll use these in weights from about 30 grams. I've even used them up to 80, but generally the sweet spot's 30 to 50 grams. And one trick with these is that you want to find one that actually swims on the drop. So you'll find some that have quite a plain profile and they're just going to rocket straight to the bottom. But a good jig you can find will be one that actually flutters on the drop. You'll see as it's sinking, it's going to have a bit of a wobble to it. Now what that will mean is that it's going to slow the sink rate down, which is not what we wanted by using this heavy lure. So what you can do while you're sinking the lure down, it's a bit of a trick, is that if you just apply a little bit of pressure to your line, so you free spool your line, whether you're using a spin or overhead, and apply a little bit of pressure, what's going to happen is that lure is going to turn and it's going to go straight down. It's going to stop the wobbling, so you can get it to the bottom, and then once it's on the bottom, you can fish it normally, and when it's in front of the fish's face, it can do the wobble and look nice and flutter and all that stuff and get eaten. But the main thing is you want to get it down to the fish fast, and then when it's down there, you can fish it the way you normally fish it, which would be slow lifts, get the lure up in front of the fish's face, and let it wobble back down to the bottom. Now I'll typically use these generally in deeper water, because you really only need to use a heavier lure like this when you're in deeper water. So when I say deeper water, I'm talking about 20 meters or 15 meters even, up to say 30 or 40 meters. So that's when I'll be going for one of these. If I know I'm going to be fishing in that sort of depth, I'll always have one of these rigged up so that I can get a lure down quickly, especially if there's lots of current. Now number 5, last but certainly not least, is the Octo Jig, or this one is called a Koga. This is by Daiwa, but there's plenty of brands that have similar options out there. Essentially what this is, if you haven't seen it before, it's made of 3 parts. So we've got the weight, which is this round fluoro lead head, and it's got a slot through there that your line goes through. So that goes on your line first. Then you've got this skirt. So this is some rubber, it's got some legs on it, and your line goes through there second. And then lastly, there's the trailer hook, which you tie to your line. So essentially you have your hook, you've got the trailer, and then you have your ball weight. As your lure sinks to the bottom, that will follow it down like so. And the reason this is very effective is these are separated. So if you can imagine, you're hopping this up, what's going to happen is the heavy part, the lead's going to go straight to the bottom. This will then follow down slowly behind. And this will have the hook to it. This is what the fish will actually eat. So you're not actually presenting this to the fish, you're presenting this trailer and the hook. So it's actually quite a small profile that you're actually putting in front of the fish. So even though this is 45 grams, you can get them 60 grams, 80 grams. It's quite heavy and not exactly appealing. It's quite bulky. This part here, these trailers, that's what gets the bite. Now with these, the way I fish them is probably very similar to a micro jig, whereas I'm lifting my rod up about 2 or 3 meters, or trying to get the lure about 2 or 3 meters off the bottom, and then free spooling it back down. This will rock it down, and then the trailer is going to sink, and that's when I'm waiting for the bite. Again, Mulloway will eat it as it's sinking down. So now this is a great option if you're fishing in deeper water, say 15 meters plus. I've used these offshore as well, chasing Jew off the Gold Coast. They work really well in deep water because you can get it down fast, and then again, like I said, still present something small to the fish. So like I said, these come in a range of sizes, 45 grams, 60 grams, and there's even an 80 gram, and they are heavier too because people use these offshore in deep water. I like the 45 and 60 gram weights. They get down in the depths that I need them in, say 15 to 30 to 40 meters deep, and still work really well. Definitely a lure I would suggest you keep in your tackle box, even if you just have one, only because it's something different. It's not a lure that many anglers will have for Mulloway. They probably use them for snapper or other fish, but when it comes to Mulloway fishing, I've had sessions where this outfished anything else. We've had a season where all of our Jew were caught using the Kogas. They outfish vibes, jigs, soft plastic. So sometimes they work really well. I'm not really sure why. It could just be the food source they were eating at the time, or potentially that presentation was just the one thing they wanted to eat. So how do you decide which one to turn on? I've given you 5 good options, but how do you know the next time you're out on the water which one to pick? So you want to look at your depth, you want to look at how much current there is, and you want to understand whether the fish are moving around or if they're just staying in that one spot behind a wreck or behind some structure. Now, if there's not much current, my first port of call is to always go with the jig head rigged Jerkshad. That's my favorite. I'll always have that tied on. Now, if there's too much current and I feel like I can't keep that lure in front of those fish, then I'm going to go to something heavier, maybe the soft vibe. If that's still not able to get there, then the jig or the Koga work as really good options. It's just about understanding the context, understanding the situation you're in. If you can make the right decision before you've worked through all the different types, you're going to have a better chance of catching fish as well. You don't want to have 5 casts at the school of fish with 5 different lures before you actually catch a fish. You want to have the right lure on the first cast. So think about the current, think about the depth, think about how they're moving, and then pick the lure that's going to best work in that situation. So a few more practical tips to finish up. Always match the jig head weight to the job. If your jig head can't get down to the bottom, it's useless. If you're fishing in 10 meters of water, there's no point watching your lure slowly flutter down because the fish are going to be in the bottom 3 meters most of the time. Color, just go for something that matches the water color. You ideally want some sort of silhouette. Lighter colors, clearer colors in clear water, darker colors, solid colors in dirty water. When your lure is sinking on the bottom, keep contact. You don't want too much slack line, and you don't want it to be tight so your lure is not working naturally either. So keep an eye on your lure as it's sinking down. That's when the bites will come. And when they do bite, set the hook straight away and get that hook in its mouth, and that way you're not going to lose it. Like I said, they're implosion feeders. They're going to suck it in. They can spit it out just as fast as well. So as soon as you feel that line go tight, set the hook and you'll be on. So those are my 5 lures that will cover almost any Mulloway fishing situation. 5-inch Jerkshads, soft vibes, prawn soft plastics, micro jigs, and octo jigs. So as I said at the start, it's not about copying what other people do, what someone has told you on Facebook, what another YouTuber is telling you have to buy because it's a game changer. If you pick the lure that suits the depth, the current, the fish's mood, you'll catch more fish. It's about understanding the why and picking the right lure for that job. If you found this video helpful, make sure you give us a like and subscribe. We have videos like this coming out each week. I also have a video that teaches you how to find schools of Mulloway, which you can check on our channel. My name is Nabil, and this is my fishing coach.